Good evening, Hillman Nation. Welcome to Lesson 4 of Slay Student Loan Debt 101. My name is Natalie Jean-Baptiste. I'm a bankruptcy attorney, adjunct law professor, and student debt relief advocate. I wiped out six figures of my own student loan debt through the bankruptcy process, and I've been on a mission to liberate people from student loan debt ever since. I'm excited and grateful for the opportunity to teach at Hillman, and I'm confident that this course will be life changing for many of you. And with that, let's get into lesson 4. For those of you just joining, I just want to give you an overview of the course and what we've covered and what we will be covering. So, in the first class, I talked about the fundamentals of student loans, like the differences between private and federal, and the different types of loans, and just the basics of figuring out what kind of loans you have and things like that. Um, and in week 2, we talked about repayment options and the best strategy for your needs and your circumstances. Last week, I discussed loan forgiveness options. Tonight, I'll be discussing delinquency and default. And next week, I will talk about how to discharge a student loan in bankruptcy. Please save the date, Wednesday, March 12th, for a bonus live Q&A here on TikTok. So tonight we will be discussing delinquency and default. So first, I'll define what delinquency is, what default is, and I'll talk about the consequences of default and what happens when your student loan is in default. And then I will give you the details on rehabilitation and consolidation. And these are the tools that you can use to get your loan out of default. A loan becomes past due or delinquent the first day after a missed payment. The delinquency continues until all the payments are made to bring the loan current. Delinquencies of at least 90 days are reported to all three national credit bureaus, which can negatively impact your credit rating. So, this is important to highlight at this point in time because after the COVID pause, there was a 1 year on ramp to repayment, which is essentially a grace period that ended on September 30th of 2024. So now some of the defaulted loans or some loans are now 90 days past due, and people are starting to see the negative impact on their credit and their scores dropping because now the grace period is over and the loan servicers are now reporting the delinquent and late payments to the credit bureaus. A default occurs after 270 days of missed payments. A defaulted account is assigned to a collection agency. At that point, the entire unpaid balance and any interest and collection fees become immediately due and payable. This is called acceleration. So, what happens when you default on a student loan? The first thing that can happen is an administrative wage garnishment. And that is the power of the federal government to garnish your wages without a court order. If you have a private loan and you default, the lender must first sue you and win a judgment in court before they can garnish your wages. That is not so when it comes to federal student loans. The other consequences include income tax refund offset, meaning the IRS will send your refund to the Department of Education and apply it to your defaulted student loan. Federal benefits offset, and that includes Social Security benefits. They can garnish up to 15% of your Social Security. You also lose eligibility for federal student aid. So, if you are still working on your degree and you are looking to take out more loans, you will not be eligible if your loans are in default. They can also litigate against you. Um, the federal government rarely has to litigate because they have so many other tools at their disposal to collect from you. but the private lenders will bring a lawsuit against you. It's important to note that federal student loans do not have a statute of limitations. A statute of limitations is the law that puts a time limit on how long a lender can come after you for a private loan. So, for example, in New York, it's 3 years. So, if it's been 3 years since your last payment and the lender hasn't sued you, then they are what's called time barred from trying to collect on the debt. It's important to note that there are only a handful of actions that don't have a statute of limitations, and it includes murder, treason, and environmental crimes. And the fact that federal student loans is on this list is extremely problematic and, you know, a reflection of the broken student loan system that we have. Okay, so now let's talk about your options for getting the loan out of default. So, one way to get out of default is to repay the defaulted loan in full, but that's not a practical option for most borrowers because if you were able to do that, you probably would not have defaulted in the first place. So, the two main realistic ways to get out of default are rehabilitating your loan or consolidating your loan. Okay, so let's discuss loan rehabilitation. So it enables the borrower to get out of default. It requires 9 reasonable and affordable payments to be made on time within a 10-month period. After rehabilitation, income based repayment, deferment, and forbearance are available. The removal of the default status, the default status gets removed from your credit report, and it's as if the default never happened. It stops any collection activity, including wage garnishment and income tax refund offsets. It's important to note that you only get one chance to rehabilitate. If you've already rehabilitated a defaulted loan, you will not have the opportunity to do it again. Okay, so with the rehabilitation, how they figure out what your monthly payment should be will be is 15% of your discretionary income. So the discretionary income is the amount by which your adjusted gross income exceeds 150% of the poverty guideline applicable to your state and family size divided by 12. I talked about this in the lesson regarding repayment options, and I showed you the formula of how they figure out what your discretionary income is. So you can go back to those lessons to figure out what the reasonable and affordable payment would be, right? So if the 15% formula, that number is too much, you can request an alternative payment amount, and it's going to be based on your household income and reasonable and necessary monthly expenses. And then there's an additional form to fill out to submit to your loan servicer with all of the household income and expenses. So essentially, if that 15% payment is too high, you can get a payment as little as $5. It has to be at least $5 though, because the whole point of rehabilitation is for you to demonstrate your ability to stay on a payment plan and pay on time and keep your word in order to get the loan out of default. The next option for getting a loan out of default is called consolidation. So if you don't have the time to invest in a 9-month payment plan, you can consolidate your loan. So basically, it's you're refinancing the federal student loan, and it allows you to pay off the outstanding combined balances for one or more of your federal loans, and it creates a new single loan with a fixed interest rate for the life of the loan. It increases the repayment period, giving you up to 30 years to repay. Um, and one great thing about the loan consolidation is that you then have an additional 3 years worth of forbearance and deferment time. So that's helpful for a lot of people. But again, also problematic because it just makes you, kick the can down the road even further and put the band-aid on the bullet wound that is your massive student loan that you can't manage anyway. So, to consolidate a defaulted federal student loan into a new direct consolidation loan, you must either agree to repay the new direct consolidation loan under an income-driven repayment plan, or make 3 consecutive voluntary on-time full monthly payments on the defaulted loan before you can consolidate it. So, after you've gotten the loan out of default, it's important to avoid defaulting again. So, if you're having trouble making your monthly payments, contact your loan servicer immediately. You may be able to switch repayment plans to get a lower payment. You can consider an income driven repayment plan where your payment could be as little as zero. You can change your payment due date if that's an issue. And you can also request a deferment or forbearance if you still have those options available on your loans. All right, so this slide is just a few resources that you can look to. Again, I always tell you guys, if you have federal student loans, studentaid.gov is your friend. That's where you can go to find out all the information about your loan specifically, but also general information about your repayment options, loan forgiveness applications, consolidation applications, etc. And then you can also go to the page about default resolution, and there are steps to take, and how to contact the servicer to begin the rehabilitation process. It's all there. And student loan borrower assistance and debt collective are also great resources that have a lot of information regarding student loan debt. If you guys are interested in working with me in the future, this is just a list of services that I provide. For debtor rights, I help stop creditor harassment. I can help you negotiate and settle your private student loan debt. I also assist with document preparation, helping you fill out the forms, complete the applications. And last but not least, anything related to bankruptcy, whether it's Chapter 7, Chapter 13, or litigating your student loans in bankruptcy. So next week, I'm going to talk about the steps and your eligibility if bankruptcy is a good option for you, if you potentially could be eligible for bankruptcy, especially for older borrowers, for those who've been out of school for a long time, for those who owe more than they borrowed in the first place. So, bankruptcy is a great option, and I don't want you to be scared to hear the B word. I'll explain how it works. I've been through it myself. I told you guys that. So, I'm excited to teach you guys that next week. All right. If you want to get in touch with me and talk about your circumstances one on one, you can book a free discovery call at slaystudentloandebt.com. This is the contact information. This is my office phone number and email address. If you guys have questions, especially questions that you would like for me to address on the live on March 12th, please feel free to email me. If you want a copy of this slide deck, please feel free to email me as well, and I will be happy to send that to you. And of course, the disclaimer, you guys know I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So the information provided to you today is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. An attorney-client relationship is not created by your attendance here tonight. Okay? All right, thank you guys, and I will see you next week for lesson 5 on bankruptcy. Have a great evening. Talk to you soon.